Hi everyone, I'm Shana Danaji, and I'm a teacher and I'm a teacher trainer, and on behalf of LEYA EDUCAÇÃO, I'm going to be running this webinar today. 1 + 1 = 4. Well, does it? I'm not sure if my maths is right, probably not, but let's see if we can make 1 + 1 = 4. All right, so today we're going to be looking a little bit at cross-curricular activities and thinking about the different approaches that we can use to deal with differentiation in the primary classroom. So these are some of the things we'll be looking at today, thinking a little bit about the differences between cross-curricular and CLIL. Also how we can use this in the primary classroom to help motivate our learners and also to cater for the many differences in our classroom. And also the way we're going to do that is we're going to take one image and look at how we could exploit that image as much as possible to deal with lots of different language areas and lots of different topics. And finally, thinking a little bit about the different approaches that we can use in our classroom to deal with mixed ability and cater for differentiation. So that's the aim of this webinar. All right, so let's think about, first of all, when we think about primary classrooms today, they're very different to maybe how they used to be. And I've taken the idea of maths to help us think a little bit about some of the advantages and the pluses of our primary classroom and some of the challenges that we find. So I'm just going to sort of talk a little bit through these, and you may recognize some of these in your own situation when teaching in the primary classroom. So children bring lots of different experiences and strengths to the classroom. They're all different, and we as teachers can build on that. Often classrooms now include lots of different nationalities and different cultures, and this helps to provide a culture-rich environment for us to teach in. Mixed levels and abilities, I'm sure some of you will be thinking that that is a challenge, but it can also be a plus in that children can help each other and learn from each other. Children are even more curious these days than before. They're always sort of out for new adventures, learning new things, and I think we can use that to our advantage. And also, they're also open to learning from different teachers. They're more used to that. The long the days gone where you know, children in primary school only had one teacher for absolutely everything, and we know that that is not the case now. So having different teachers also means that they're more open to different teachers and also to different approaches. Also, children are encouraged more and more, I think, to reflect on their own learning and to become more self-aware. The so-called sort of 21st century skills that everyone always talks about can be exploited and to help children be sort of notice how they learn. And that also we can use to our advantage. Of course, none of this comes without challenges. So we've mentioned the mixed abilities and different levels and different cultures, and these can prevent challenges, of course, because we're not teaching a group where everyone is exactly the same. The fact that some children have never learned English before, or had a gap in their learning. So as we know, some children, start learning English very, very young in sort of preschool and carry it through the first and second year into the third and fourth. But some of us are encountering children who are starting the third year where they've never had English before. And that, of course, means that within one group, we have lots of differences in terms of ability. Behavior can be an issue. I mean, it's an issue in any primary classroom, but the fact that English is sometimes the sort of fun and games or looked at as the fun and games kind of subject can create some behavioral issues. And that, of course, is a challenge for us. Children are not always motivated to learn, and they don't always see English as an important part of their schooling compared to the amount of time maybe they spend on other subjects like maths or Portuguese, or science. So I think the fact that they only have English maybe once or twice a week with a different teacher, sometimes they don't see it as important. And also the timetable can affect how the children are in the classroom. They can be sort of more tired and not as focused, despite, as we know, we know that English should be part of their sort of curricular time, but that is not always the case. And sometimes, we teach them at the end of the day where they're sort of tired and not as focused as they could be. Teachers themselves are, and we all sort of bring our own challenges to teaching primary children. And one of the things is the fact that we're not always as informed as we would like to be, or as we should be, about, what the children are learning at any one time. So, in an ideal world, the class teacher who teaches them all the other subjects is, teaches them English as well. And they know everything that is going on in the child's education at any one time. The English teacher doesn't always have the privilege of that information. And sort of the timetable, the schedule, the time factors can also affect the fact that teachers don't always have the necessary time to collaborate with the class teacher and to find out what is being covered in other subjects. So if we want to sort of bring English in line with the other subjects, that is not always possible. So let's think a little bit. So we have a picture of some of the pluses and some of the challenges, but let's think a little bit now about cross-curricular. And I mentioned earlier that we're sort of contrasting that with CLIL. So CLIL, in my mind, doesn't equal cross-curricular teaching, or does it? Right now, some people use these terms interchangeably. So if we think of a definition for CLIL, right? I mean, everyone knows that it stands for Content and Language Integrated Learning, right? So we are teaching some subjects through the medium of English. Cross-curricular teaching, on the other hand, in my view, is a language or a skills-based lesson that's using a topic or features of a different school subject in order to teach language, right? So for me, there is a very clear distinction between these two. Let's have a look at some examples, right? So a lesson that is teaching animal vocabulary through maybe talking about their habitats. What do you think? Is it CLIL or cross-curricular? What about a lesson that's teaching children about animal habitats in English? Is that CLIL or cross-curricular? Right, in my mind, the first one is very clearly cross-curricular, in that my goal is a language goal, right? So if I think about my language, my aim for that lesson is to teach them some vocabulary in English. By the way, I'm going to be using habitats to be able to do that. But my main goal is to teach them the language. Whereas in the second one, my aim is to teach them about animal habitats. And by the way, I'm doing it in English. So the second one for me is an example of CLIL. So I know that sometimes these are used interchangeably, and in a way, does it matter very much if we use the wrong label? Not necessarily. The reason I'm talking about it here is that I think it's more likely in our teaching in the primary classroom that we are using cross-curricular approaches to teaching and not CLIL. Unless you're working in a bilingual school or you're teaching in a school that uses CLIL methodology as a routine, I think most of us in English language teaching will be using cross-curricular approaches in our teaching. It's more likely. All right, so we're going to look at a few more examples, and I'd like you to think about, is it mainly CLIL or mainly cross-curricular? I'll give you sort of a few seconds to think about it before showing you the answers. Right, so an example of a maths lesson taught in English. What do you think? CLIL or cross-curricular? Right, in my view, that is a CLIL lesson, right? So again, going back to our definition earlier, our aim there is to teach the maths, right? What about a lesson teaching the colors in English? Do you think that's CLIL or cross-curricular? This one for me is cross-curricular because my goal is to teach them the colors. So it's a language aim. What about the next one? A lesson focused on what happens when we mix different colors in English. Now here, of course, we're going to be talking about the colors, but our goal is to teach them what happens when we mix things, right? So here, for me, that is a CLIL lesson. So you can see a pattern here where we're thinking about the aim of the lesson. Is it a language or a skills-based aim, or is it a content aim? What about this one? A lesson focused on an important monument in their town. So maybe they're talking about something, you know, in Lisbon or wherever it is they live. What do you think? CLIL or cross-curricular? Right, for me, a CLIL lesson. Right, so I'm focused on the history maybe of that monument. The second one, a lesson focused on reading a simple text about a monument or a famous person with maybe some new vocabulary. What do you think about this one? Right, for me, that is cross-curricular, in that it's a skills aim, right? I'm doing some reading in English, maybe teaching them some new vocabulary. And by the way, the topic is something that is linked to another subject. And finally, we have a lesson where children categorize some English words into different groups. What do you think about this one? Right, for me, this one is cross-curricular again. Right? So I'm focusing on lexical items in English, and I'm using an operation like a mathematical operation, looking at categorization, etc., in order to do that, right? So I'm bringing in another subject, but I'm not teaching that other subject. So here we've looked at a number of examples of lessons and how maybe they are focused on the subject matter, and maybe they are focused on a linguistic or a skills aim. All right, so if you remember way back, we would sort of think in terms of our aims for the session, it was to think about how we can incorporate some of these cross-curricular approaches in our lessons to deal with all the sort of mixed ability and differentiation. So we're going to have a look at one example of how we could do that. And I've chosen to use just a very simple image for this. I'm going to use this image throughout the rest of the webinar. Just let's try and exploit it as much as possible, right? Just for simplicity's sake. So something as simple as an image can be used to address both differentiation and mixedability, and also focus on cross-curricular teaching. I've chosen a random topic, and in this case, it's something which, you know, fruit and food and eating, everyone likes that. It might not be the topic that you're covering with the learners that you're teaching right now, but we'll see later how you can adapt this for other levels. So taking that topic of fruit and vegetables and eating in general, you could think about all the language that could be generated from this image, and all the topics that can be generated. So I've given here a list of all the things that I could think of. Maybe you could take a minute to think of your own. You might like to pause the video and sort of brainstorm how many language areas and topic areas you can think of, and then compare it to mine. All right, so in terms of language, obviously the fruit and vegetables themselves, but food in general, the colors, you know, so it's a yellow banana, a red apple, and so on. The numbers, you know, how many bananas have we got there? Talking about plurals, all right, so one banana or two bananas. The size or the shape, right? So, you know, we can talk about, is it a big banana? Is it a small banana? Is it a round apple? All of those things we could discuss as well. The adjective order. So is it sort of big yellow banana or a yellow big banana? What do we say? And then, of course, there are other adjectives, you know, like talking about the taste. Is it sweet? Is it bitter? Is it juicy? Is it healthy? Is it unhealthy? Now, I'm sure you're thinking, but a lot of this language I'm not going to be covering in the third year or the fourth year. Maybe it's things that come up later on in the children's schooling. It doesn't matter. For now, we're just doing a brainstorm of all the possible language areas. And then, of course, you can select those ones that are most relevant to you. In terms of topic, I've tried to sort of link them to some of the subjects. I'm not sure that my knowledge of what is covered in the subjects is as good as it should be. So forgive me if I've sort of mislabeled some things. But here we have just a sample of the many different things that can be covered. So in terms of science, you know, looking at healthy and unhealthy foods. Maths, you know, weighing or counting. So we can, do we buy a kilo of bananas or do we buy 5 bananas? I mean, when I go to the market, I'm trying to think, do I say I want a kilo or I just want 5? Again, linking to science, you know, the sort of classic food wheel, you know, all the different food groups. Categorizing, you could get the children to categorize the vegetables and the fruit and other food as well into the different food groups. Drawing, you know, drawing some fruit, painting, you know, looking at still life paintings, also sort of trying to incorporate some art appreciation on the part of the children. Thinking about geography, sustainability. You may have noticed in my image that, you know, they all the fruit and vegetables is in a cloth bag, right? So, I mean, you could talk a little bit about how the fruit and vegetables and food in general is packaged in supermarkets as something that is quite topical right now. We're doing away with single-use plastic and so on. Talking about where they come from. So am I eating a banana that was grown here or in, you know, in Madeira, for example, or is it something that is coming, you know, from South America? And talking about the nuances of that as well. You know, social sciences, sort of going to the market, you know, do they shop in the market? Do they shop in the supermarket? Looking at sort of community recipes, cooking. You know, they could do a little play about, you know, shopping at the market, etc. So you can see that just that one image with a very quick brainstorm can generate lots and lots of different language and topic areas. So language and topic. All right, so going back to the cross-curricular and the CLIL aspect here. So as an English language teacher, my goal is to teach them this language. And by the way, I'm going to use some of these subjects to create a cross-curricular approach to my teaching. But my goal is not to teach them the subjects. Right, so hopefully that is coming across throughout the rest of the examples we look at. All right, so we have our image. We've thought about all the possible language areas and topic areas, and now we're thinking a little bit about in terms of mixed ability. So as we said earlier, our primary classrooms have all these differences, differences in culture, differences in level, differences in background, differences in experience, and we need to cater for that. So how can we go about doing that? There are many different ways of doing that. So one possibility is to, use the same task, but expect a different outcome. Another way is to have open versus closed tasks. Another way, different tasks with the same materials. Different materials and the same task. And then, of course, the classic that I think we all do, which is have mixed ability groups, so mixing our learners so that sometimes we have strong learners and weaker learners all together, working together and helping each other, or we choose to do same ability groups. Right, so we have stronger learners all working together and weaker learners all working together. All of these things have advantages and disadvantages. So you may recognize some of these here in your own teaching. And I'm going to continue with the idea of that one image to explore some concrete examples. Okay, so here we are. We're back to our image, and we're going to look at a few examples using this one particular image. So going back to our maths, we've got apple plus banana equals mango. Strange kind of maths, right? But if we look at these images here, you can see exactly what I'm getting at, right? This isn't a new activity. I'm sure it's something you've seen before, but it's something that's quite useful in bringing in sort of a maths operation into a language lesson, all right? So you can see here that yes, apple and banana equals mango, right? If my maths is right, 3 plus 1 equals 4. Right? And of course I can do other things. So if let's be really sort of challenging, we do broccoli minus apple equals strawberry, right? And so on, right? So we can think of lots of different possibilities here. And the teacher can model this, and then the children can come up with their own sums. And of course they can do, multiplication, division. I've chosen just to have 1 to 5 here, but we could have numbers up to 10. They could be random numbers. You could get the children to suggest their different maths and so on. And obviously this idea can be used with lots of different topic areas. All right, another, let's think about same task, but different outcome. Right? So here, for example, if we look at this image, everything you see is healthy food, right? But maybe we want them to think about things that they can't see, all right? So we're challenging them to see what's not in the picture. So we get them, for example, to think about healthy and unhealthy foods. So the list, the idea is for the children to come up with lists or to categorize the words that they see and not see into healthy and unhealthy foods, right? Here you could have mixed ability groups or same ability groups. And one option is to leave it open, so they just brainstorm ideas and they write down as many as they can think of. Or you could, give them a sort of some guidelines. So you say, all right, I want you to write down 3 healthy foods and 3 unhealthy foods. If you write 3, that's great, because that's what I want. If you write 5, even better, right? But, you know, and maybe you could give them a timeline, a time limit for this task. So, you know, obviously the stronger students within the same time are probably going to write more than 3, whereas the weaker ones will probably only get to the 3 or maybe 4. But everyone feels successful because everyone has done what you have asked them to do. Another example is the idea of different tasks, but the same materials, right? So again, I'm taking a very simple idea of writing a list. And again, using our image, I want you to write a list. Easy, hey? Everyone can do this. However, we may choose to sort of give different groups or different learners a slightly different task. And so here I've just given you an example of this. So again, you could have, you know, one group gets the first column, right, where they have to fill in just the missing letters. Obviously, I've only put one word here, but they would have a list of words written like this. Another group gets jumbled words, right? So slightly more challenging. And a third group don't get anything at all, right? So they could just come up with as many words as they can. And here, obviously, it could just be random, that they're thinking of words in the that they can see, or you could say, you know, write all the yellow fruit, or all the red fruit, and all the red or green vegetables, etc. Right? So you could tailor this activity in any way you like. So you can see here that here they're getting slightly different task. Everyone is writing a list, but what they're doing with it is slightly different. A nice thing to you could link this back to, you know, what we were talking about earlier. So, you know, in terms of the food wheel, you know, groups of different food for different categories. You could ask them also, you know, to write a list of, you know, if I want to make a fruit salad, what am I going to include? So you could link this back to the subjects that we mentioned earlier. I particularly sort of, you know, I think it's positive to have, you know, differentiated tasks for different learners depending on their ability. But obviously one important thing is that you don't want to make this too obvious. So you don't want, you know, some children to know that they're always the ones that get the easier task. So one option there is to get them either to work in mixed ability groups, and within the group, they're doing different tasks, so they're still within a group, so they're helping each other. And one thing I particularly like is to let the children choose. So you say to them, you're quite upfront about it, and you say, these are the 3 options that we have, and you can choose. Now, clearly the stronger learners are going to choose a more challenging task, or maybe not. Maybe they're feeling lazy that day and they choose an easier one, but that's okay too. And the weaker learners are going to choose the easier task. So they themselves are going to come up with what you would have done if you had, you know, handed out the task and divided them up. All right, another idea is this of having open versus closed tasks. Now, I've chosen something here which is slightly different. So it could be for a writing task or for a speaking task. I'm going to show you one which obviously could be used for writing, but I think the exact same activity could be done for speaking as well. So simple describe and guess. All right, so imagine you don't see the text. I could just do an oral thing. I'm round, I can be green, red, or yellow. I can be big or small. I am a apple, right? Now, this could be done speaking, so the children take it in turns to describe and the others have to guess, or it could be expanded to make it into a writing task. right? You could, if we want to go back to our subject areas, you could use the idea of sort of science or geography here, where they could add in where the fruit or vegetable comes from, where it's grown. Is it grown on a tree? Does it grow in the ground, etc., that sort of thing, all right? So you give an example, and then, okay, now you choose and you describe a piece of fruit or vegetable that you can see in the picture, or not. It doesn't have to be in this particular picture. It can be anywhere you like, right? So a closed example of this task would be to give them these prompts, and then they just choose the appropriate word. An open version of this would be you give them the model and then they just choose and they write or speak their description. All right, so here an example of something that is closed and open. So again, dealing with differences in our classroom. All right, so we're coming on to another example where we can use different materials but the same task. And again, I've chosen something which is very, very simple here. So we have the images and we have slightly different versions of the same thing. So what we want the children to do here is to maybe match the word to the picture. And you can see, you know, in some cases they get an image which is either blurred or zoomed out or zoomed in, or slightly covered, right? So I could use this card here to sort of cover up the image so that they don't see it. You could get them to match the word to the picture. You could get them to match a sentence to the picture, a description. But here you can see that everyone is getting slightly different materials, but they're doing the same task, which is a matching task. You could combine this maybe with art, where the children look at an image from a different perspective and they have to guess what it is. They could draw the fruit or vegetable from a different perspective. The idea of zooming in and zooming out is a very nice way to sort of reflect on perspective as well. All right, so that was just one idea. As I said, I chose to do food, but we could use the same sort of process with any different topic. So a topic that maybe you would cover in a different year, maybe in the third year, is family. And so again, we would want to brainstorm all the topic areas and all the language areas that we can deal with in this topic. So again, if you want to take just a minute to think about it, or pause the video, and then compare it to mine. All right, so here we have you know, the family members, the classic mother, father, brother, daughter, brother, sister, grandmother, etc. And we could also expand it to include sort of less well, not less common, more common, but maybe less taught members like, you know, stepmother, stepfather, etc. Numbers and ages. You know, I have 2 or 3 brothers and 3 sisters. How old are they? Plurals. Again, size, you know, tall, short, adjective order, right? Jobs, talking about parents and grandparents, hobbies, what they like and what they dislike, comparatives, you know, sort of taller, shorter, older, etc. And in the same way as we did with food, we've got the different topic areas that link to different subjects. So comparing ages, maybe sort of a graph or a survey in the classroom, sort of coming up with all the different, most parents are between this age and that age, right? How many brothers and sisters everyone has in the class and so on. Looking at jobs and hobbies fits in with social science. Describing, they could draw their family. The classic that everyone does, I'm sure, is ancestors and the family tree. So here we could explore history as well. Geography, so where the family lives, where they come from. I mean, many children have grandparents that are living in the country or in a village, and they could talk about that. Drama, sort of, they could sort of mime, you know, who one of their family members, and the others have to guess. Music and song, you know, the classic happy birthday and so on. I've chosen something that's very simple, but you can see here how the same topic area can be exploited in the same way as we did with food. So the idea of 1 + 1 = 4. So does it? Obviously, I know it doesn't. But the idea here is that, you know, the ever-changing nature of our classrooms means that we can't teach every child in the same way. But what we can do is try to integrate what we teach them with what they know, and try to cater for the differences that we have in our classroom as much as possible. So I hope that was useful, and that there are some ideas there that might inspire you to make 1 + 1 = 4 in your classroom. And maybe there is one idea that you can use soon. So thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.